Hello again, Tourpreneurs, and welcome back to another episode of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. Today, I am joined by Peter Syme, my partner in crime, and Chris, but not Chris Torres, our normal Tourpreneur partner. This time it is Chris Mark. Chris is in the connectivity business and he works with GetYourGuide. And our topic today is going to be demystifying this ridiculously complex world of APIs and connectivity and all it actually means practically for tour business owners. It is, believe it or not, important. I think sometimes people will roll their eyes or scratch their heads in confusion, but today we're going to make the case for why it's important to be thinking about this as you grow and scale your tour business. Chris Mark, welcome to Tourpreneur.
Thanks for having me, Mitch Peter. Great to be here.
Chris, you actually have a really interesting background. You are not one of us weirdos that have spent our entire life in the tours and activities space. You actually lived out in the world, but on this same topic of connectivity. And I was wondering if you could just talk to us a little bit about your background, at what point in high school did you complete a career quiz and it said API connectivity is your future?
Yeah, it's quite a journey. I would say I come from the tech industry. So my thought is technology is rapidly changing, rapidly making the world a better place, sometimes a scarier place as well, but hopefully for the better. And it creates solutions that can be applied to many industries. So career-wise, I spent a bunch of time at Uber Eats early stage. That certainly opened my eyes to the world of obviously creating a brand new industry from off of an already well-established industry of ride sharing. And that was also where I started to get into the world of API integrations. Uber Eats very much runs on API integrations these days. It's instrumental for the food delivery business to be able to grow, to integrate with point of sale systems and things like that. Saw some of the similar things at DoorDash. And then previously, before I came here, I was at Cloud Kitchens, the software side, which is called Otter. And our bread and butter is integrations across the board. So the idea here was you take your point of sale system that every restaurant in the entire world has, right? Be archaic and impossible to not have a point of sale system these days in the restaurant industry. And you plug it into your Uber Eats, your DoorDash, your Deliveroo, your Just Eat, right? Your every food delivery solution, your direct order. You can plug it into your workforce management, to your CRM, to your marketing engine, right? And the idea is that this becomes an all-in-one. We are the connector and we're the all-in-one tech solution, but the cornerstone there is the point of sale system, right? And I find a lot of parallels with the travel industry, right? You figure that most connectivity solutions have been around for 20 or so years, from what I know about history in the industry. You could say the same for cloud-based point of sale systems. What I find interesting is the adoption rates differ, right? Cloud-based, the vast majority of restaurant owners these days only go cloud-based, right? You wouldn't want a point of sale system that only works in your specific location, but you want something that works across all your locations. That is more similar to what we would call a connectivity solution, right, in the travel industry. The adoption's not quite there yet in travel, but I'm also confident that it will get there. And I hope to turn over some rocks of useful information today as we're speaking.
I think it's worth going right back to the basics here, because obviously the audience is tour operators, many of them really small tour operators. We have a bad habit of just saying things in the industry like APIs. I can guarantee you many of our members do not know what an API is, even though they're using one, right? So if we could just talk about what an API is, where it sits, how are the tour operators using it, even the ones that they don't know they're using, they are, and how it could be expanded going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, the comparison I use to explain an application programming interface, right, is let's say you live in a small town in the U.S. I don't know, you live in Iowa or somewhere like that, right? I'm from Ohio. You live in Ohio. And you have two libraries that want to combine their book catalogs. One uses the Dewey Decimal System, right? One uses the Library of Congress's system. So if you know anything about those, they basically organize libraries in two different ways. It's an apples to oranges comparison right now, right? So what you're looking for in order to build and integrate those two systems is a common denominator, or what we call tech industry an index key that's shared between the two systems. So if you notice, a book has an ISBN number. It's like an international serial something or other number, right? That is like your index key that you can then use to link, or what we call in the API world, map library 1 to library 2 and combine your catalogs together, right? Now, tour operators are using these all the time. I mean, for instance, most people in their lives use Google Calendar. Google Calendar and Google have like thousands and thousands of API integrations, right? You book a flight on, I booked a flight a couple of weeks ago on Lufthansa. It popped up on my calendar. How did that happen? There's probably an API integration underlying that. Your banking software overwhelmingly uses API integrations. Sometimes even your payment processor, whether you're using Square, Adyen, or whomever out there, is also relying on an API integration. So it's a bit of a hidden secret that kind of makes the world go round that we don't realize.
So in our world, for the operators that don't really know where these APIs are serving them, basically they've subcontracted all the API work, whether they know it or not, to the reservation systems. So we have literally dozens and dozens of fantastic reservation systems in the industry. And those as part of your contract as a tour operator with a reservation system, they're managing APIs on your behalf in order to connect with the OTAs, in order to connect with different partners.
Exactly, yeah. So at GetYourGuide, right, we integrate with many reservation systems, hundreds of reservation systems, right? And the way to think about how an API works at a reservation system is essentially it has different drawers. Let's put it in a real world example. Let's avoid the tech side. Let's put it in a real world. It has a bunch of different drawers, right? Like, and your socks go in one drawer, your pants go in another, your shirts go in another, right? Similar to your tour ID goes in one, the description about your tour goes in another, your photos go in another, right? So basically they have these APIs that essentially have spots for all this information. And you as the operator, as a supplier, when you create something, when you create a tour in the tour operator's software, right, it then ends up in the appropriate box. And then when you start to sell and GetYourGuide, for example, we go and we grab that info, right? And we can do great things with it, like you can automatically register in one click, depending on what res system you're using, or perhaps in time we can push information over automatically so you don't have to go and type the same thing on your res system that you type directly and GetYourGuide and so forth. So essentially it can make your life significantly easier in many ways. That's just one of 100 ways.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate. Is this your full-time job? This seems really easy. You just create all these fields that say tour title, price, description, and you make sure that your booking software can pull in title, price, tour description. Like, are you also working for DoorDash? Are you delivering meals? Like, how do you spend your time?
You would think, right? I mean, technology obviously operates on its own. I used to get this question when I worked at Uber Eats. The question I always get was, "Oh, that's great, you're a driver." Like, no, I mean, I have delivered many meals to learn more about the product, but no, I'm not a driver. And two, it doesn't run itself. It actually breaks sometimes, right? And so from our point of view, right, API integrations are pretty close to perfect. Let's say they're 98 to 99% reliable for the best in class, maybe even like 99.5. But the reality is we're talking about millions and millions of calls of data every single day, possibly billions, going between, for example, GetYourGuide and every reservation system, every supplier build API. For the big suppliers, sometimes they build their own APIs, right? There are billions at times of transfers of data happening every single day in the blink of an eye and split second. So you can imagine even a 0.5% error rate is exceptionally painful and can have a massively negative impact on you, the traveler, you, the supplier, in the real world. So I wish it were that great. I don't wish, because then I'd be out of a job. But one day it may be that great, right? Where there are no errors, there's no downtime, there's no maintenance. But we're not quite there yet.
What So you've delivered meals to understand the product when you worked at Uber. Have you experienced the booking software that operators use?
Definitely for our larger partners, I would say I've run through at least 7 of them to experience firsthand, right? What does the creation of a tour look like? What kind of features, what kind of back of office features, let's say, does the reservation system and connectivity solution offer that can take the pressure off of suppliers? And there's a substantial amount of variance in the industry. I think one of the hardest things about the connectivity industry is that it is so just fragmented and confusing. And on the surface, you don't know what to look for as a supplier, most likely, right? It's tough for a supplier to be able to differentiate solution A from solution B. I don't want to throw any names out. I'm not, unfortunately,
We'll leave the names out of it.
I'm not doing any free marketing, unfortunately, for my friends. But right, it's unclear what is a good solution, and me as a supplier, what should I choose, right? I maybe you go with what your friend went with. So with the cheapest option, I get that sometimes from suppliers. My friend used it, so
it's a bad idea, and yet this happens every single day in the Tourpreneur Facebook group. It gets heated. What booking software should I use? And then it's just a spattering of recommendations from all sorts of different points of view. Now, a lot of it is about just the functionality that's appropriate for their businesses. We don't get a lot of conversation about like API connectivity strength, but what are some of the things that an operator should be thinking about in terms of assessing the connectivity score, I guess, as you look at it? You know what I mean? Like how do I as an operator kind of like look at this and go, this one is good and this one maybe not so good for me? Is it just number of connectivity partners or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say like one, well, I think you mentioned it, Mitch, right? The first question is, what does your business need? Like, what is it that you're trying to, how much time will this save you? Because time is essentially money, and you're obviously going to pay you're going to pay a connectivity solution money. So it should obviously, the math there should work in your favor, right? So that's what I would say is number one. But then to try to understand what I would call like a high quality solution, I would define it in a few ways. One, it's exceptionally reliable. So reliable meaning has no errors. Essentially, you're never going to go through and book and sorry, you can't book because some random error came up, some problem came up, because errors equal loss of bookings for the supplier. How do you figure out who is less error prone? Obviously at GetYourGuide, we've done some identifying of high quality solutions, of course, right? We have a connectivity partner program that basically says, hey, connectivity partners, like we want to be sure to elevate the best solutions to suppliers out there. If you meet certain criteria, right? If you're able to win this race that we identify every year, the criteria to win, then we will elevate you. We'll say, hey, you are an advanced solution or a premium solution, right? Now, know that we're not the only ones that have that, right? Vider has it, Expedia has it, a whole bunch of, right? A lot of aggregators have this. Those are very extremely objective assessments. Believe me, we very much value the fidelity and the trustworthiness of our own program at GetYourGuide, and we know that we would not be recommending a solution if it was not high quality. And high quality generally means not error prone, right? Generally reliable. They don't have long maintenance windows. I would say beyond that, one is another, like, do they support robust features? So this may vary from supplier to supplier, but are there certain pieces about your business that make it unique? Do you implement a dynamic pricing model? Do you send a lot of deals or discounts? Or does your pricing vary day over day or by time of day? Or are you in a particular industry that you think requires some more nuance? Like, and I think sometimes like the ferrying industry or boat tours or some of these things may require some very interesting nuance, like ski rental, right? You can get very nuanced in with certain suppliers, and not all REST systems have the ability to mirror the intricacies of those suppliers. I would say to support, you want 365, 24/7 support. You do not want a system that will leave you hanging when something goes wrong. The better ones will offer that level of support. And then I think another thing to consider for suppliers is, are you kind of looking for an early adopter, a REST system that's an early adopter? In other words, a REST system that's a thought leader, a connectivity solution, right, that's a thought leader in the industry, that are pushing out features that are actually, very much on the cutting edge of the travel industry. And you can generally see who these are. I would recommend, subscribing to their LinkedIn pages or maybe their newsletters for certain systems. You'll get a good view of who is really pushing the envelope, because in the industry there are early adopters and there's legacy systems, right? There's legacy systems that thrive on that generally appeal to bigger operators, bigger suppliers that say, look, we're not super innovative. That's not our game. But what we can do is provide a very customized solution for you. That may not be someone that, certain suppliers want to go with. But I would say that kind of, if that helps to unpack the lack of transparent numbers, let's say, I hope it does make things a little bit clearer.
There's maybe a project there for us in Tourpreneur where we reach out to 4, 5, 6 of the biggest OTAs, get their rankings off their partners, and then we consolidate all the rankings and publish it.
You would see a very clear trend there, right? Because generally, a booking system that is good with GetYourGuide is also likely to be good with Viator, is going to be good with Expedia. Of course they are, right? Yeah. Because they have better tech, they have more talented people running their systems, right? And they're more forward thinking.
I think there's also some that are figuring out needs. Like we have a big need for Airbnb experiences, and they don't have an open API, but they're using ZapX and some other services. Some providers have figured out how to cobble together those types of integrations. So you're right. I think you can see some of those that are looking at those needs and thinking outside of the box and how to connect.
Absolutely. Everyone's looking to differentiate themselves, right? In an industry where it's unclear how solution A is different from solution B. I think the ones that want to win will differentiate.
So speaking of differentiation, one differentiator that is a big topic in our group right now is some providers are starting to charge for API connectivity when it always used to be just a free part of the service that booking software provides. What's your take on what's going on with this idea that there's more and more fees being assessed with connectivity?
Yep. So obviously I'm biased working at an OTA, but I think it's also an objective fact. More and more bookings, more and more revenue from travelers is shifting toward the OTA space, and not so much with direct bookings. And I think their connectivity solutions, right, are starting to catch up with that reality now, and are starting to say, hey, traditionally we lived on monetizing direct bookings. Now market's shifting. Let's wake up. Let's start to reflect that reality and start to focus on more monetizing OTA bookings, for example. But what the other side that I will say is, I'm confident that the connectivity solutions will come through with more back of office solutions, a better offering, right? And I'm also confident that the ones that are charging for those, you would also see strong alignment with, for example, our premium advanced partners. I think most of them do charge for OTA bookings, but again, they're the best out there, right? So if you want the best solution, sometimes that does come with a bit of a price.
If the operators listen to that, who are wondering why this charge is coming in, it is really quite simple. The growth in bookings going through a reservation system via OTAs is higher growth than direct bookings. Now, the direct bookings will still dwarf the OTA bookings in mass, but if you draw two growth lines, the growth of the OTAs is significantly higher than the growth of direct. So if you extrapolate those numbers forward, you end up with a res system. If they're doing it on a fee per booking base, this stops making money at some point in the future because of the way the bookings profile is changing. It's different if a res system's charging a monthly fee or a yearly fee and they're not on a booking fee. They can absorb everything into one fee, and it's up to the supplier whether that's an acceptable fee or not. But because we broke down the charges, this is getting a lot of pushback in the community because you're charging for this and then you're charging for that and you're charging for the next thing. It's been driven by the fact that the growth of OTAs is outstripping the growth of direct bookings.
Yep. And it's a tough one, right? Like pricing is a one-way door. Every marketplace I've worked in, once you go through that door, there's no going back. And it's always extremely painful to go from, hey, this was free, and now it's not free. That is a really painful choice for anybody to make. But I think one of the things you have to remember too with connectivity solutions is they are always investing in the quality of their APIs, whether that's reliability, whether that's building out and adopting new endpoints, right? We release Viator, Expedia, all of us release new features, new endpoints all the time to enhance the experience, the booking experience, the traveler experience, and the supplier experience for on our own platforms. And the res systems then have to follow up also and adopt those. And that's an investment on their end. And keep in mind, right, they're maintaining these integrations across hundreds and hundreds of channels. That is not cheap to do.
So
I feel like
one of my favorite questions that I ask operators all the time.
Can you start that over just so I can edit?
One of my favorite questions I ask operators all the time. I did it last week in New York. We did it in California in December. Room full of operators, multiple rooms of operators, probably over 300 over the last couple of months. Can people stick their hands up if they've got more than 50 partners selling for them? No hand ever goes up. Can people over 30? Rarely does a hand go up, maybe one. Over 20, I think over the last 2 months, we've probably had 2 or 3 out of over 400 operators. Over 10, maybe half a dozen. Over 5, we start to get some more numbers. But most operators have got a very small amount of distribution partners. And then if you turn the question and say, well, how many distribution partners do you want? Do you want to sell via many more partners? Yes, everybody wants 10, 20, 30, 40. So for those operators listening to this podcast, the reason you need to be interested in quality of API and this API discussion and connected discussion is because if you're going to grow your distribution to 20, 30, 40, 50 partners and above, the quality of the API really, really matters.
And I would say too, the easy use of the integration, right? Like, you as a supplier are not going to go to 50 individual systems and type in your content, right? Individual OTAs and type in your content, but some have an integration where you can just push that content, right? Or you can push aspects of the content to simplify your ability to create your tour.
Chris, when does it become important for an operator to think beyond their booking software and think about a channel manager that might open the doors to even more potential integrations? Can you explain that different entity in our network?
Yeah, and channel managers are interesting, right? They are what it sounds like, right? They specialize in essentially maximizing the amount of channels that the supplier can connect with. Now, quite a few reservation systems also integrate with channel managers. We integrate with channel managers at GetYourGuide. They're certainly an important part of our infrastructure and part of our growth strategy. I think one of the things you have to sort of ask yourself as a supplier is what are your aspirations, right? So with a channel manager, they're going to give you access to quite a lot of places to sell your product. Now, know that on the receiving end, the product may not look as, let's say, as unique as it would on your own direct site, right? But it is nonetheless still, if you want to kind of spread it widely and get your voice out there and draw in attention, I think it is a great strategy. But a lot of it depends on your aspirations as a supplier. What are you trying to be? Are you trying to grow and become a a larger business? If so, a channel manager is a good part of the strategy, but know that there is some sacrificing happening with channel managers. And a lot of the sacrifice is you're not going to necessarily get as unique of an integration as you would with a res system, right? You're not going to be able to show all the content you want to show, for example.
Well, I think that's also one of the biggest complaints that operators have, which is, wait, why am I showing up on this website and they have all of the information actually wrong? I changed the meeting time and the price is totally out of whack. What is going on there?
I want to talk to your reservation system about that one.
No, I mean, I think honestly, sometimes it's not GetYourGuide, actually. It's some other OTAs that actually have agreements on behalf of you. Theoretically, they are good agreements that spread the word by becoming the engine behind some of these other sort of white labeled platforms. But it seems like there's often integration breakdown or lag or something happening.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends on, again, sort of back to Peter's point, right? It depends on the quality of the integration. Is it, you can certainly have an integration break, like an error occur. Perhaps a particular tour breaks, has an error, has some sort of problem not transferring the data appropriately. And if it's not addressed, it doesn't fix itself, right? We're not in the world fully of AI fixing everything. We still need humans to go in and fix these things. So it could be the case of it's just not well maintained. And that again, that goes back to the quality of the res system, the quality of the connectivity solution. Are they actually holding the line and focusing on quality?
I always mark that clock when we mentioned AI for the first time. 32 minutes, not too bad. Actually.
I was waiting for it. You know, I didn't want to be the first, but I had to give in. That was a golden opportunity.
I think Peter Syme is feeling under the weather. Otherwise, it would have been 3 minutes in. But let's talk about that. So should we see more and more integrations becoming easier and easier to create? Is the world going to become much more connected? CRMs and booking softwares and distribution partners, because I can go into Claude and in 3 minutes, I'm now connected between HubSpot and Airbnb experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the barrier, the entry, the cost reduction to building an API will go down, right? Now, it's debatable after the build process, right? What about the maintenance of it? That's a bit of a trickier problem, is being able to solve issues when they come up, right? I can build a great house, but if I can't run water and electric to it, it's not really going to be too great of a place to live, is it? That's sort of the comparison I would draw with AI and API. So, but I would say the piece that it'll put to, say, connectivity solutions, you get your guide, OTAs, is in this world of lower barrier to entry, more cost reduction, to being able to build an API and possibly maintain it in time. How do you make yourself stand out, right? There's still reliability. So there are many APIs out there, many connectivity solutions. I could tell you that our error rate, so the percent of time that an integration fails, let's say, varies anywhere from 0.3% to 100% of the time, right? So there are integrations out there that just flat out do not work, and ones that work sometimes but really don't work well. A lot of them. So there is still the reliability piece, even if you have an API. There's still the ease of integration piece, right? Of how easy it is to map, how easy is it to keep content similar or updated between your REST system and your OTA, your other channels. And then I think the other is just unique value-added services. So this is what you're starting to see with connectivity solutions, is they're thinking, what else can I offer? Right? How can I differentiate myself? And it doesn't always start out as software or as a technology, right? It may start out as a person and then evolve into software. But they're always thinking of how can I make myself different from the rest?
I'm seeing the start of it's mostly in the startup world, but there's API marketplaces starting to form up, where they're basically a middleware. You just need to connect to the marketplace and you've got access to 100, 200, 300 APIs, not just in travel space, but APIs outside the travel space. What's your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, they sound very similar to channel managers,
Yeah.
right? Thoughts on those is, again, like it's a strategy to get your name out there, right? If you think about, I draw a parallel back to my time in food delivery industry, right? If you think about the reason that a lot of suppliers use an OTA, for example, in the first place, it's marketing, right? A marketplace, it's a virtual marketplace where you can be discovered and would not have otherwise been found. It was the same way for food delivery, for a small, medium business, right? Like, does McDonald's need to be on Uber Eats? Probably not. I mean, everybody in the world knows who McDonald's is, but does a small hole-in-the-wall pizza place that you've never heard of that just opened up, would they benefit largely from a delivery service, food delivery service? Absolutely, right? Because today I deliver pizza to you and you like it, and then next week you come into my restaurant and eat, and then I get all that revenue, right? So I think with the marketplace you're speaking of, Peter, like it's a chance to get your name out there, right? And it depends on your aspirations as a supplier. How big do you want to be, and what are you willing to sacrifice here? Because you will sacrifice some quality, you will sacrifice some uniqueness. If you really just want to hook the customer in, and then you're confident you can sell them on the experience once you have them, right, that your tour is so unique, they're just going to show up and they're going to love it, even if they get there 30 minutes early because the time's wrong or something, then I say go for it. It just depends on your aspirations.
I want to be clear for our community as well. Just because we're having this conversation doesn't mean we're telling you, whoever you are, should be out there on 70 platforms connecting with everybody.
No.
It's a different business proposition for different cases, especially for multi-day tour operators. Multi-day tour operators, you should almost just turn this off and go work on your business, work on your website, because it's a different customer journey. API connectivity is so far behind, partially because there just aren't the platforms out there. Do you think about multi-day tours and about the challenges of like what that's going to look like as you develop an API?
I've started to think about it. And sometimes with APIs, right, it's I would draw a parallel back to the house, sort of the house analogy I was speaking about before, right? If I take my API and I want to find a way to accommodate for multi-day tours, I could try to remodel my house, right? Like I could do that, but at some point it might just be better to either knock it down and build one, or just build a whole new one, right? So for multi-day tours, remember, again, with APIs, the more complex it gets, the more problems that happen, right? Anything that has more layers, more endpoints, more features, the probability of problems occurring just continues to multiply, right? It's a fact of life. So with multi-day tours, I think because it is so different, we'll have to ask ourselves, should we just build another API from scratch? Because it's a vastly different industry. It's also not something where the connectivity landscape is particularly well developed. So we may be leaning more into supplier APIs, which are also very tricky, right? Because you can imagine there are many suppliers out there. You have to integrate with every single one individually. But obviously, if the opportunity is there, if the revenue is there, we'll go do it. So that my thought is, perhaps I build a new house for multi-day tours.
This came up several times last week at our conference, and it's come up in the group multiple times, but the group is quite big now, and there's still a misunderstanding. There's a lot of small operators still assuming that all the bookings that come from GetYourGuide or come from Viator, come from any OTA, are landing on that OTA's platform and then coming to the supplier. There's Whereas I know, and you know, that a lot of the bookings are coming from multiple partners the OTA is connected to. In Viator's case, I think it's 48% of their bookings are driven by partners rather than on their own platform. So operators listening to this podcast, this API connectivity is what's driving lots of your bookings from partners that you've never heard of the brand, never heard of the name, hotel groups, transport groups, tour operators you've never heard of, who have used APIs to connect into the OTAs. The booking lands on their website, it fires through the GetYourGuide website or the Viator website, and it ends up in your booking system. So I think it's worth emphasizing knowing where you are in the ecosystem as an operator, knowing where you want to get to, and picking the partners who have the biggest networks rather than trying to build all the networks yourself, because 5 to 10 partners actually give you a huge network if you pick the right networks.
So I want to close out with a couple of questions. One is, where do you see all of this kind of API stuff going? Like, just as you look ahead, what's next for this idea in our sort of tours and activities universe of connecting things?
Yeah. So I draw parallels back. I do draw parallels back to the restaurant industry. I alluded to this at the start of our conversation, but so if you think of a restaurant today, how many in the last 5 years have you ever walked into a restaurant in most of the world where they did not have a point of sale system, right? They were literally just pen and paper. It's almost unheard of in this era. In a large portion of the world too, by the way. And 20 years ago, that was not the case though, right? That was like point of sale systems were very much not cloud-based. They were very much within the singular restaurant and almost not present outside of large restaurants. Now the thought of running a restaurant without a POS would be ludicrous to any restaurant owner. And they not only think that, they use it for everything. They use it for workforce management. They use it for inventory management. They use it for many things, data analytics, insights, all these pieces of information, right? So it's caught up in the restaurant industry to be the norm. I think the travel industry is on its way, and I really do think you're starting to see res systems evolve in a similar way that you saw point of sale systems evolve, where they're saying, okay, what other problem can I solve for you, supplier? Right? You have employees. Oh, maybe I can add a function to capture time cards or hours worked, right? And then perhaps maybe I can run payroll for you. Or maybe I can, help you get a better deal on ordering that champagne that you offer on all your boat tours or something, right? Like they're thinking of ways that they can save you money and continue to become more of a cornerstone of your business, of supplier's business, right? I see that continuing for the connectivity solutions. And then on the other side, right, I just see, I really do strongly believe that more and more the consumer behavior will shift toward OTAs. I think the power of market, obviously I've worked in marketplaces for a decade. I believe in the power of marketplaces, virtual marketplaces. I think this is how people shop in the 21st century. They're not going to call you up and request a tour, right? Especially people of a certain age, maybe not my age, but close to it. This is a generation that would rather text than call you. And they want to do the same with booking their experiences too. So I really do strongly believe that more and more will shift toward OTAs, but also especially toward connectivity, toward a more connected future.
Well, we were about to close out this episode, but you just opened up a can of worms. Unfortunately, we can't leave it at that, because this is exactly the great debate kind of in our group amongst tour operators, which is like, you come in and you grab what is rightfully otherwise going to be the tour operator's own, which is a customer would just go to Google and search through 5, 10, 15, 20 websites, choose the tour operator that they like the most, and book there. So talk to me a little bit more only because I feel like sometimes I want to bang my head against the wall, because it's, to me, as a citizen of the 21st century, apart from commissions and customer service or whatever like complaints you have about a marketplace, marketplaces sit very fundamentally at the center of so many of our commercial relationships in our lives since the dawn of the grocery store. And so, I don't know, can you just talk to me a little bit more about like this as fundamental customer behavior? And it's not on the increase because not on the increase because you are just trying to grab the market share of tour operators, but because it is a new default setting of human behavior.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I think there's two key features in marketplace. There's two key features in marketplaces that you wouldn't get from the experience you just described. Right. And the one, like, I don't believe that most people are going to go through 10 to 20 results on Google and figure out which one they want. Like, most people just don't have that much time. But that aside, like, let's assume that's not a reality. Let's assume they may do that instead. I think it's two things that you get with a marketplace. One is marketplaces thrive on trust. You cannot have a marketplace without trust, right? When I book an Airbnb, I have to trust that, one, the reviews are trustworthy and that Airbnb has my back if my Airbnb turns out to actually be a broom closet, right? And in addition, I trust that when I press the button that Uber driver is going to show up, his license plate's going to be what it says it is, and his car is going to be what it says it is, and I'm going to get there safely, right? All marketplaces thrive on trust. GetYourGuide's marketplace thrives on trust. And there's trust in the sense of, right, we have support, we have all these structures that will also help you if you are to run into issues. That's one part of trust. The other part of trust which is a cornerstone of any marketplace, is social proof. People, especially, I would say people my age, will not go to a restaurant unless they see the Google reviews or the Yelp reviews. That is just a fact. Even if their friends recommend it, they're going to go see the reviews. And that is the social proof piece. The trust that, hey, this tour guide has a 4.8 and virtually nothing below a 5-star, has got to be amazing. Now, when I'm going directly to your booking site, I can't tell that. I also probably don't trust that your reviews are unbiased because you publish them, right? And the other piece too is most tour operators don't invest substantially in a Google My Business listing, right? Like, I can't find most tour operators on Google Maps. It's not like it's not a restaurant. It's not a museum or something necessarily. So there's this social. How else are you going to get social proof? How else are you going to have that trust? Because that's also what people really want in a marketplace.
So for all the tour operators listening to this who haven't got your Google business profile sorted, that we have a full course on, and we've been ranting on for years, get your Google business profile sorted.
For the record, we have endless free resources to help people grow their visibility across all of these different surfaces. Chris, that was a great answer, and I think we're going to keep chipping away at this. For our whole audience, we are regularly having these conversations with Get Your Guide partners simply as an attempt to normalize the conversation around the value proposition of OTAs and also the growth opportunities that exist through partnerships. Big thing that we are constantly talking about in our community is making more B2B partnerships, and undergirding that in 2025 are APIs. It's Chris. It's Chris in a brick room in the dungeon of Get Your Guide headquarters, making sure all the bleeps and bloops keep blipping and blooping.
Absolutely. We got to keep that error rate below 0.5%. That is a high number. We got to keep it below that.
We also know at the moment we have a high amount of operators in the group who are changing reservations to them. I'm not going to go into all the reasons why, but we have a high amount changing at the moment. One of the questions they should be asking, how good is the API connectivity?
Well, Chris, I'm going to stop recording and then you're going to tell me secretly what your favorite res techs are to work with. But thank you so much for sharing your insights, for demystifying connectivity a little bit. And we appreciate you being on Tourpreneur.
Thanks, Mitch, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
For anybody listening, more resources always on tourpreneur.com, including a free account, which unlocks our Tour Business Toolkit, which contains a tour product optimization ebook. It includes our booking software ebook, our Google Things to Do course. These are all things that are free. They're there for you. They're in partnership with all of our partners like GetYourGuide and Google to help you grow your business and understand what you can do to make your business better.